Hey guys, Marc at Sattui coming at you with this month's recipe for our Wine of the Month Club, featuring one of my most favorite Cabernet Sauvignons and our newest addition to the game. This is the 2018 Vangone Cabernet Sauvignon. Now this wine is very unique for our Cabernet Sauvignon lineup is that it's not valley floor, nor is it mountain. We're right in the middle of the zone, kind of in the hillsides there, right above Oakville. So this makes, to me, what I think a very diversely fruited and tanned wine. Now, firstly, to get into our fancy hand-dipped wax top bottles, the best thing to do is to just ignore the wax and thread your corkscrew all the way down as far as you can until all the coils are down, and then using the cantilever, just pull straight up. And the wax will break beautifully right there along the top, and you've got a clean break. And it also remains looking beautiful even from the sides. So the dish that we're going to be preparing to pair with this wine today is mushroom tarts with aged Gouda and honey. A very diverse dish for a very diverse wine. All right, so we're gonna start by caramelizing some onions. And the easiest way to get a nice cut of onion to caramelize, to not cut rings, but to slice the bottom and the top off, go lengthwise down, and it'll actually make it quite easier and, as well to just grab a hold of that first layer of skin and remove it. Now the cut that we're gonna be doing has a fancy French name, and you wanna sound more elegant to your guests about how you prepared this dish. You can say that the onions were julienned. And julienne, again, just a nice thin slice lengthwise on the onion instead of crosswise, which will make more of a half moon ring at this point. And you want to do it fairly thin, but they don't have to be paper thin. So into a medium high heat pan, we're going to throw our pat of butter. And once this butter begins to start to melt down, we can grab our julienne onions. Now the whole point of caramelizing is just that. You're trying to make caramel, and that's simply coming from the natural sugars that are within onions. Never add salt. What salt's going to do is actually wick out all the moisture in the dish, and that just tends to make more of something that you end up simmering or boiling in its own liquid. So by keeping the liquids inside, it can convert to those sugars more readily available to caramelize. So while those are going, and it's going to take a few minutes, and you just want to stir them every once in a while, we're going to go ahead and prep the next part of this dish, which is the mushrooms. And I love, cremini mushrooms. I've heard playfully some people call them baby portobellos. And unlike the white button mushroom, they do have a lot more of a meaty flavor and an earthy tone to them. So to get our mushrooms going, make sure that you always wash them and then grab the stem at the bottom to wiggle back and forth. You'll be able to get that stem out very, very easily. So just, 1/8 slices or just thin slices, nothing too particular. There's a tool I can teach you to keep you from cutting your fingers. So you all know how a bird's feet can come together in this sort of shape to make a claw, and put that right on top of your food product, but you need to turn your hand like a 90-degree angle. It feels a little unnatural, but what you're doing is actually protecting that thumb in the back, and because all of these fingertips are curled in, the knife never has a chance to hit anything. So always employ the claw. All right, let's give these guys a stir again. We are going to be what's called deglazing the pan, and that's when we're going to add some of our beautiful white wine or our 2020 Napa Valley Sauvignon Blanc. And using acidity along with red wine pairing actually tones down the tartness of these wines, especially Cabernets, and will bring forward more of a body in the fruit. We're going to get the help from a little bit more butter. So in go our mushrooms. Mushrooms, although they feel dry, they are loaded with moistures. And I promise you, if you were to add salt to this dish at this point, that would of course make this like a lake in the bottom. All the moisture would come right out of the mushrooms. Now, while that stuff is on the oven, we've got a few more ingredients that we're going to get going. And namely, we need garlic. Snip off that root end, kind of give it a little crush, and just fall right out. So using my old trick of the back of the knife, we'll run these all through once. Now we can spin it and go our one time through. Onto our fresh thyme. There's definitely a sweetness to the air around it, but the oils have a nice earthy tone to them as well. So the majority, those woody stems we don't want. Well, how's our mushrooms doing? Beautiful. This is what we want to see, guys. See how the bottom of the pan, there's little things sticking. It's got a nice brown color to it, but it's not burned. And that is what the French call fond. F-O-N-D, just the word for foundation. And that's building a nice foundation of caramelized sugars direct onto the bottom of the pan. And when we deglaze with our Sauvignon Blanc, it's going to release all of those beautiful concentrated flavors up into this dish so they can be absorbed into those onions and mushrooms. So let's give this thyme a quick little chop through. Wow, and it just releases those sweet aromatic oils. This would give us time perhaps to make the egg wash, and we need this to paint the crust of our puff pastry. So simple enough, guys. One whole egg and just a splash of whole milk. And then simply just taking a fork, or if you have a little tiny whisk, but fork will do, but you want to get this nice and incorporated. All right, simple enough, and insert your pastry brush and get it to begin to soak up your egg wash, and just set this aside for now. So at this point, guys, I can tell that almost all of my mushrooms now have a beautiful caramelized color. So this would be the time to add these two last remaining ingredients. And I'll tell you something, if you think your kitchen smelled good before, wait till you add these two ingredients. So in we go. And you'll see instantly the color of that fond begin to release from the bottom of the pan. So, of course, nice fresh sea salt or kosher salt. Let's get a few twists off the pepper grinder. And then just simply turn off your heat, guys. All right, so let's grab the old cheese grater, and not the largest holes, but those medium-sized holes I like. It just allows the cheese to melt a little bit more even. And aged Gouda is one that I love to recommend. Well, really any dry aged cheese. And those salts and fats will soften tannins and really bloom the richness of the fruits of wines. Now we're going to grab our puff pastry. But the key is you can't use it or even unfold it when it's frozen. So you do need to let it sit out for a few hours. And we're just going to make some equal squares here. So here's a little trick, is to start on one of the corners here. Don't go all the way off to the side, and leave about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch border, and come down to this corner and continue your line to the next, but don't penetrate through. Now we can turn this and do exactly the same thing here without going through here, and continuing our line down, not going through here. So we're going to egg wash this inner border here, give it something to stick itself to so that it doesn't fall apart when it goes puffing up in the oven. And then grab your two opposing corners, trade sides, and simply tuck those borders down. And now we've got that layering that's going to keep our filling into the center. And when this puffs up, you'll see these corners actually look beautiful as well, almost like little ties. So here's one. All right, so now we've got our 4 pockets ready, as it were. And oh, my goodness. And get your portions into the center as much as you can. Get a nice mound in the middle. And now, for that aged Gouda, try to make a nice mound on top. It's just enough to where we're going to have a nice melty, bubbly, caramelized crust. All right, now into our oven. And it's gonna be about in between 10 to 15 minutes. All right, time to enjoy some more wine while that's in the oven. All right, guys, it's time to grab them out of the oven. Look at those beauties. Now it's this simple, just time to plate up and finish off with that garnish of fresh honey. Now, of course, you're gonna wanna feature Sattui own honey, right? A lot of you guys don't know we have our own. Olive oils, honeys, you name it, we're all over it here. But what a flavorful local honey this is. So just a nice thin drizzle over the top of each of these, get a little bit on the crust, a little bit to the inside. We don't want much, just an accent, a little bit of sweetness. And I like, at this point, just take a little bit more of your aged Gouda and with your microplane, just a thin shaving, and just sort of a fresh pop of that aged Gouda. And here you have it, you guys. Mushroom tarts with aged Gouda and our own Sattui honey, paired perfectly with our Vangone Cabernet Sauvignon. What I'm going for in this dish, you guys, like I mentioned in the beginning, some complement and some contrasting. So having that wine that really has sort of those two different worlds going for it, the mountain and the valley. Again, let's see how we did here. Guys, I gotta tell you, it's gonna be a knockout punch. Your next dinner party coming up, this needs to be your red wine featured hors d'oeuvre or appetizer. Spring has sprung, everyone. Till next month, cheers.